still in the left lane at 270, a jam back across the Blanchette Bridge. Pockets from 79 out through Lake St. Louis after that. Southbound 55, Arsenal to Bates. Westbound 44, jam downtown between the bridges, and 64 east of the Poplars heavy. In fact, westbound 5570 onto 64, the delays begin at 203. I'm Roger Brand at the MichaelsFlooringOutlet.com Traffic Center.
News, traffic, and the latest on the Redbirds. This is the Redbird Rush Hour on KMOX.
Redbird Rush Hour on 104.1 KMOX. Matt Pauley, Kevin Wheeler with you here. Kind of an impromptu, unexpected edition of the Redbird Rush Hour. There was supposed to be Cardinals baseball happening in a half an hour.
Not happening.
But tonight it's rained out, so a doubleheader scheduled for tomorrow. There's more rain tomorrow, so it could get messy. But it did look like there's a window in the evening, so hopefully at least one, but ideally two. Get them both in tomorrow. So Thursday can be an off day for both of these teams. I know teams hate losing scheduled off days.
Yeah,
so.
You would rather not have to go back into Philadelphia.
Right, later in the year for sure. But
yeah.
It would be preferable to just do it Thursday than to do that because the Phillies are off and they're at home Friday, and then the Cardinals obviously go to KC. But you'd rather that than come back later when you could be doing a St. Louis to Philly to LA type thing. Like you just don't know.
Teams really avoid doing that next day because that from a logistics standpoint with hotels and planes and everything, all of a sudden at the last minute staying an extra night, sometimes that is a challenge, especially say if like a conference is coming into a city or something like that. So I don't know what's going to go down.
So the schedule is 12:15 and 5:15 for tomorrow. Those are the scheduled start times. And this, of course, is in the middle of a Cardinal 90-game winning streak. So there's a lot of good. And I say this all the time, whether it's here or on Twitter, the team's performance kind of dictates how things sound at a given time, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, when things are going well, there's not a lot to criticize. And if there are little things to criticize, you just kind of put them in your back pocket and you say, all right, like as an example, I'm not going to get into this today. As an example, I think there's some concern about Arenado staying in the fourth spot in the lineup. It's not a big enough concern now to spend time on, but it's in my back pocket for later in the year because he's not hitting as well as Contreras and Herrera. I'd like to have the better hitters of that, but it's a minor thing now because you're on a 9-game winning streak, and it's stupid to complain about little things when you're on a 9-game winning streak. But the starting pitching has been good. The bullpen has started to come together, and there's been some structure to it now that Graceffo has kind of worked his way into at least temporarily a role, and then Steven Matz has put himself in there for real, along with Leahy, who's been amazing, and we'll talk more about him later on. Maton's been very good, and obviously Helsley has had a couple of hiccups, but I think wouldn't you agree? It's been kind of a lack of consistent work.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
He needs, I know their general rule is once it's been 5 days that he hasn't worked, they try to get him in.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe the number should be less than that.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he's getting enough work.
Absolutely not. And again, more leads, and he's getting more now that you're winning games.
Right.
But more leads in closer games late will definitely be helpful. All right, so we got a lot to do today. Part of what we're going to do on Tuesdays moving forward is kind of go over some of the highlights from Ollie Marmol on the Gas House Gang earlier in the day. And today he was joined by Dusty Blake, the team's pitching coach. So I thought it was a really interesting conversation, Matt. And we're going to pick out a couple things to talk about there. We are going to talk about Rob Manfred today. Basically saying that once you have passed away, you are no longer on baseball's banned list,
right?
Which means that Pete Rose, Shoeless Joe, and others are now eligible to be selected for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and it's the headline today has been that
it's Pete,
Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson have been reinstated. No, the rule has changed, and the result of the rule being changed is those two individuals are no longer on the permanently ineligible list because Rob Manfred has deemed that once you're deceased, you can't be on that list anymore.
Right. And we'll dive into that later on in the show. So if you want to chime in, you can do that on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. You can do that at 314-436-7900, not just on that topic, but on anything related to that topic or the Cardinals as we go through the day. So let's get to something that Ollie talked about today on the Gas House Gang. And that's one of the things that's not been going well during this stretch, which is the performance of two of their young bats, Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker. They're just not really, they're not really contributing all that much. And Ollie offered up some thoughts on that at the moment.
Yeah, I thought this was interesting. So this is a lengthy response from him on what's going on with both those individuals.
I am committed to both of them for the reason that, they're having a tough time. there aren't a ton of things pointing in a direction, if I'm just being completely honest. And I've had this conversation with both of them where it says like, hey, this is pointing in the right direction. Just keep doing it. The game starts, and it's been hard for Jordan to carry the work that has happened in the cage into the game. But if you had the luxury of watching his work with Brownie underneath and BA and Packy, man, you would be encouraged that, man, this is going to carry over because the work has been good. It transferring to the game under pressure in real time just hasn't happened yet. So we're committed to continuing to see that through. With Gorman, it's different, man. Like, I know there's some stuff written on, well, the bat speed's down. Well, if you're trying to make contact, it's going to come at the expense of something. Bat speed isn't the end all be all, right? There's guys with crazy amounts of bat speed that can't hit. So yes, he is sacrificing some of that for contact. And is it showing in the game just yet? No. But we have to stay committed. And I'll say it again, Brando, we talked about this, like at the end of 2025, we have to know what we have with these guys. So we don't have to talk about what that runway looks like. We are head down just trying to get them to transfer it today. And then we wake up tomorrow and we're going to do it all over again. But I will say that both of them do feel supported in this process, and Brownie's continuing to do a really nice job with them. But we have to stay committed to it.
Kevin, there's a lot there.
Man, there is. I mean, he's right. That's a great point about bat speed coming down. Sometimes it is that way when you're trying to favor contact over just power.
And he's got enough power that if his bat speed comes down a little bit, it's not going to have a huge impact.
And it's sometimes it's for the time being.
Right.
And when Ollie's talking about it, like contact hitters tend to be lower bat speed. Power guys are higher bat speed. And guys that are kind of in between can be either. It's just a matter of selection, right? And so if Gorman is getting off his A swing against pitches that he can handle, well, then that's fine. That's what matters. It's if you're fouling off tougher pitches, or if you're taking a pitch the other way, that's not going to have the same effort level to it. That all makes sense. And I don't question anything he says there. It's correct. This is just the nature of their situation to me that makes this difficult, because they can be committed to those guys. And I totally believe, Ollie, that they are. There just aren't at bats for both.
Well,
Nolan Gorman's got 17 at bats in May.
Yeah.
He's got one more at bat than Jose Barrero. And I want to be clear. He's not earning them. He's not saying, put me in the lineup because I'm hitting. And neither is Jordan Walker. But the hardest part here is the balancing of the two things. Finding out about these two guys. And also, you're a game out of first place. And other guys are hitting well. Yeah. Right? This is a lot to do with Herrera being so good and being the DH now.
The commitment, I think, with Gorman is it's a commitment to keeping him on the team, as opposed to the commitment to
same
him
with Walker,
being in the lineup. Maybe, but we're not there yet. Like, he got a couple days off as they were working on some things, but for the most part, Walker is still an everyday guy. Maybe at some point it changes where his availability looks a lot more, and that's probably connected a lot to Alec Burleson and how he's hitting because
and he's been better in May. Burleson has.
He's been a lot better. So if you can't keep Burleson out of the lineup, that probably comes at the expense of a Jordan Walker. I believe Ollie when he says, man, if you could see the work these guys are doing. Yeah. And let me ask you this, Kevin, because between the three of us in this room right now, you're the guy who's played baseball at a pretty high level. How tough is it when you're trying to fix something when, man, you got it going in the cage, or you got it going on the field, like whatever it might be in a practice, in a non-game situation, but then the lights turn on at 7:00 and muscle memory takes over and competitive juices start flowing. How tough is it really to start implementing those things?
It's hard when you're thinking, right? So if you're in the box in a game and you're thinking, you're done. And I see a little bit, at least that's what it looks like to me with Gorman. With Walker, it's back to the same thing. You got to lay off pitches you can't handle. And that can be it's not mechanics necessarily. And if he has a hard time recognizing spin, right, recognizing slider versus fastball, then you got to change how you hit and maybe think more about hitting in zones, right? So anything away, I'm going to lay off. And if they call it a strike, well, oh well.
Yeah.
And if they throw something middle or in, then I'm going to hit it. And it's all easier said than done. That's the problem with hitting, is everything with hitting is more difficult to do than anything else in the game. All right, we'll have more on those guys. We're going to have Dusty Blake talking a bit about how the Cardinals use analytics to help their pitchers get people out. It's an interesting explanation for how they're doing it. Plus, we got more on the Pete Rose thing and the Hall of Fame later on the show. It's the Gas House. No, it's not the Gas House Gang. It's the Redbird Rush Hour on 104.1 KMOX.
I met my wife in law school at the University of Florida. She was from upstate New York and I was from Kentucky. We met at a daily mass at St. Augustine's. She was the most beautiful girl I'd ever
duration. It's slow. Again, approaching Winghaven and 364 out to 70. Eastbound 64, you've got slow stuff east of Mason all the way through the Interbelt in pockets. Westbound 44 from Laclede Station through Elms busy. Southbound 55 Arsenal to Bates. Westbound 44 jams through the bridges. In fact, eastbound 70 delays begin east of Salisbury, and 64 between 70 and the Poplar is heavy both ways. I'm Roger Brand in the MichaelsFlooringOutlet.com Traffic Center.
This is the Redbird Rush Hour on 104.1 KMOX.
A special edition, I guess you could say, of the Redbird Rush Hour.
I like that.
Here on 104.1 KMOX. Wasn't planned. We're supposed to be having Cardinals baseball. It's been washed out tonight. Doubleheader tomorrow. Matt Pauley and Kevin Wheeler with you here. And what we're doing on Tuesdays, in addition to, by the way, fielding your comments, thoughts on anything you want, questions, opinions, throw at us. You can do that on Facebook or Twitter or on YouTube if you're watching on the stream. If you're just driving around and you want to do a voice to text, you're sitting around listening, it's 314-436-7900. Later on, we'll talk a bit about the Hall of Fame announcement from Major League Baseball today. And we'll also talk a bit about where the areas where the Cardinals can improve. Because a lot's going right. Let's be real. And we're going to talk about those things a lot because and they're important. They're why you're winning 9 games in a row. But actually, the encouraging thing to me is things aren't perfect, as we talked about with Gorman and Walker, and you're still kind of competitive. You're game out of first. You've won 9 in a row.
That's more than competitive.
No. I completely agree.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the big picture, game out of first is competitive, not in first. But you're right. They've been really good now for about 16, 17 games. Mm-hmm. And that's how we'd like it. I think it's 13-4 in the last 17, if I remember correctly.
Almost a 75% win percentage.
Yeah. And it's the best record in baseball in that time. But of course, it's a small sample size, we all know. But what we're going to do on Tuesdays moving forward is pick some pieces here and there. And you'll hear more of this on Sports Open Line tonight, too. Yeah. Of Ollie on the Gas House Gang. So he joined Ranji and Ackerman and Bernie earlier today. Ollie did. But he also brought Dusty Blake with him today virtually. They weren't here, but they were joining via StreamYard, joining via video chat. Easy for me to say. And I thought they hit on a really interesting topic, Matt, with Dusty Blake and pitchers and the use of analytics.
Okay, I love this. And I would say there's a lot of people who hear the word analytics and they start rolling their eyes and, listen to what we're about to play for you from Dusty Blake, because you want to hear the application of advanced numbers and how it helps you. Well, here it is.
We do use some more advanced numbers. I guess it depends what somebody's definition of advanced may be. One thing we look at a lot are run values. And I think the simplest way to understand a run value is if I throw 2 fastballs to get 2 strikes on a hitter and then strike them out on a slider, in most every analytic number, the slider is the one getting the credit. Because it ended the at-bat. But the first 2 fastballs are what made that possible in a lot of scenarios. And so run values just give every pitch throughout the at-bat some value, not just the one that ends the at-bat. And even though the one that ends the at-bat certainly has the most value in that scenario because you got the out, if we're able to use pitches to get to that point, we just get a lot better idea of like how valuable, how effective this pitch is, not just when it ends the at-bat, because there's a ton of volume there for pitch effectiveness and what we can look at. And then simple things like xWOBA, where you consider the speed of the batter and exit velos and launch angles, all that type of stuff, versus maybe looking at like average against, where sometimes there's some unpredictability. And the softest ball in play still leads to a base runner about 1 out of every 3.5 at-bats. And so if you look at xWOBA, you may get a little bit closer idea of how effective this pitch really is to this hitter. And then we try to break it down pre-2K, hitters counts, and in 2-strike counts to make sure as hitters potentially change their approach, we can keep an eye on what pitches they may hunt a little bit more, what pitches they take more in the zone, what pitches they chase more, that sort of thing.
I'm geeking out, Kevin, but I could listen to him talk for hours on that.
Yeah, I think for people that are afraid of the letter soup, right? Because he's referred to xWOBA. That is simply expected weighted on base average, yes. Right? And the weighted on base average is simply taking offensive production and getting it to a number that looks like an on-base percentage. So to understand it, if it looks like a good on-base percentage, then it's a good hitter, or it's a person that hits that pitch well. If it's a low on-base percentage, say 290 or 300, well, then that means they're not doing well against it. It's just a simple way to break down what this guy does to this pitch in these situations. So it's just more detailed because, as he pointed out, unlike batting average or even on base percentage, it kind of takes luck out of it because it's measuring the quality of contact and not just what happened.
Right.
A bleeder single is a single and a line out is a line out, but the line out was a better at bat by the hitter. And those are the things they're actually weighing. And I find that to be fascinating.
Yeah, I liked it. And you know what? I like the fact that they say, hey, the hitter might change his approach with 2 strikes. So we need to change our approach with 2 strikes as well.
Yeah. And again, these are just, it's no different. This is why I like to do these segments, Matt. What he's talking about there is no different than all of the notes that Dave Duncan took over all those decades.
The numbers
except
are really
except that it's got more data backing up the conclusion.
Yes. The base of those numbers is all very simple. Like you don't need an advanced degree to understand what's being talked about there. It's just because we have more grasp on the numbers, we have more data available.
And again, all that really is describing that as he put it, XWOBA, it's just expected weighted on base. All that is doing is saying, here's how well this guy hits the ball on this pitch, and this pitch in these counts.
So avoid
That's what that is. Right. And you're going to avoid the good ones, and you're going to play to the ones that are to your favor. That's all that is. All right, stick around. We got a lot coming up. We're going to talk more Hall of Fame later on. We're going to talk about areas where the Cardinals can do even better than they are at the moment. It's the Redbird Rush Hour on 104.1 KMOX.
Farming's hard. To feed the world, farmers have to work the land, brave the elements, and
A huge burden will be lifted from your heart and your soul will be renewed. Even if you're not wrong in your own mind, it doesn't matter. Death is bad enough. Death without closure and love will follow you the rest of your days. Trust me on this. Morgan & Morgan. Injured? Dial pound law or visit forthepeople.com for an office near you.
You're listening to the Redbird Rush Hour on 104.1 KMOX.
Redbird Rush Hour on 104.1 KMOX and 11:20 a.m., of course. Matt Pauley, Kevin Wheeler with you here. You can join us and throw in your questions, comments, opinions on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and on the text line 314-436-7900. Right now, it's time for the Game Day Men's Health Peak Performer. Get back to the top of your game with Game Day Men's Health. You can find them at GameDayMen'sHealth.com. I'm using this. Our peak performer is Kyle Leahy. Not just because of yesterday, but yesterday was amazing, and it was so important because of the way that it played out, because he gets lefties out really well. His development as a real weapon late in games is one of the most important things that's happened for the Cardinals this season.
Yes, and he gets 7 outs yesterday.
Yeah.
7 outs from Kyle Leahy, and when he struck out Bryce Harper, he had this grin on his face when he came off the mound. And I think he realized that he got rid of it real quick. I think it was it was either, oh, that was cool, or, man, these guys can't do anything against me today.
I think it was more like, that was awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, 1.09 ERA, a guy who can go pitch 1 inning, a guy who can get righties and lefties out. What he's doing from a handedness standpoint, you just don't see in Major League Baseball. And, man, big time credit to Oliver Marmol for using him in the way that he used him yesterday. That's a 1-run game in Philadelphia against a good lineup. And he rode Leahy. Maton wasn't available, so that was part of the motivation there. They set it up where they only had to get 1 out from JoJo Romero, and he got it. And then they got Helsley for the 9th.
And what we're seeing from Leahy, and again, this is all pending every other disclaimer that you could make, right? It's early. He hasn't done this for a year or 2 years, whatever. But what you're seeing from him so far, if it were to be able to be maintained, is the kind of stuff that works to close games because you're getting lefties and righties. And it's the kind of stuff that works as a starter.
Yeah, because you got lots of pitches.
Because he's got 4 pitches.
Yeah.
He's got 2 breaking balls. They're both good. He's got a good changeup, and he throws 97. And I wouldn't be shocked if next spring he comes into camp stretched out to pitch as a starter like Liberatore did this year.
Technically was this year.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying I wouldn't surprise me if they did that again. It also wouldn't surprise me if he's your closer next year. Not, again, it's super early. I'm just saying that's the kind of stuff that he's showing. Will that change over the course of the next 4 months? It might. It might. I'm just like, but we're only talking about what we've seen so far.
The one other thing I would say that makes me optimistic that some version of this can continue on is we have seen continued progress from him. This isn't like a flash in the pan sort of thing.
No.
We saw last year
some of this was there last year. Yeah.
Last year was a great year for him stepping forward. And Bernie Miklasz has brought it up a lot that he's somebody that when he got leverage opportunities last year, he tended to come through in those situations. So it does feel like we are continuing to see Leahy get better. They talked about him today during the Gas House Gang, and they talked a lot about the fact that he is somebody who's just always looking to improve himself. Needs to change his shape on a pitch, he's going to go do it. Needs to do some work to add some velo, he's going to do it. Gets advice from somebody else about adding a pitch, he's going to do it. Like, just has a very open mind to finding ways to improve.
Yeah, it's been great, and I think it's the latest version of that might be Graceffo. Like, I'm hoping Graceffo can kind of mimic some of that and not be in that leverage, but maybe be in some leverage situations. And then, of course, Steven Matz being there gives you now 5 guys in the back of the pen that at the moment you're comfortable with. Again, that can change with any of them at any given time. But right now, that's different than where we were even 2 weeks ago, where it was 3.
You can, with 5, you're good. You got 5 guys you trust in leverage. There's very good teams that only have 5 guys they trust. 5's a perfectly good number.
Coming up in a couple seconds, right after a quick traffic hit, we're going to be talking about the other things that the Cardinals can improve on, because there is so much going right. We're not ignoring that. I'm thinking there's just another gear that they can still get to, which is kind of fun. So we'll do that right after a quick hit with Roger Brand.
Traffic from the MichaelsFlooringOutlet.com Traffic Center.
Well, guys, they just cleared the crash north 270 before Ladue. All lanes open, but traffic still jammed north of Doherty Ferry up to that point. South 270 still jammed south of Page through that 64 area remains heavy down through Manchester. South 170 still backed up in pockets from Olive to 64. Westbound 64, Kings Highway out through Clayton Skinkers slow. McKnight all the way to 270's heavy. A couple of slowdowns through the valley out to the Boone Bridge, and then from Lake St. Louis Boulevard out to 70. 70 heavy stuff eastbound from 170 through Lucas Hunt. Westbound's busy at the airport, and 79 out through about Highway K, and then you're in good shape after that. If you're on southbound 55, Gasconade Bates, a little busy. Downtown, they just cleared a crash. Eastbound 64 east of Union Station, a backup near Grand through there. Westbound 44 is still slow past the bridges, and westbound 5570 is backed up from the 64 split there on 64, headed to the Poplars, bumper to bumper. Mutual Veterans, though, looks great. I'm Roger Brand at the Michaels Flooring Outlet.com Traffic Center.
All right, right back to the Redbird Rush Hour here on 104.1 KMOX. All right, let's talk about some of the things that can be better, Matt. And this is not meant to be a critical thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're all happy with the performance of the team. You're getting a lot of things going right. This is just, to me, like, I think there's another gear. I don't mean better than a 9-game winning streak. I just mean level of play, right? I think for example, I think there's more power in this team. We haven't seen a lot. They don't rank high in home runs. I think they're going to rank higher on the home run list as we go through, because Wilson Contreras was a late starter in contributing to that, and we're starting to get more of it. Ivan Herrera missed he's only played 10 games, and he's got 5 home runs.
Yeah.
So he's going to be adding power to it. I think eventually Burleson and or Gorman will add some power to one or the other. I think, Burley is not a great home run hitter, but he is a 20 homer guy. You saw that last year. So that would be an area where I expect improvement. This is not a demand or a criticism. I think there's going to be more home run power shown by this team as we go.
I think you can get a little more out of Lars Nootbaar, and don't get me wrong, he's having a really nice season.
Very solid.
His OPS is almost 800. I don't worry too much about batting average, but at 250, I feel like he can maybe be I don't want to say a little bit more of an on-base guy, because the on-base is fine at 372. I just feel like there's
maybe a little less streaky.
There's a gear I don't think the Nootbaar has found quite yet, because you look at all of his underlying numbers, and this guy just yells and screams perennial all-star type guy. So you say this team finding another gear. I think Nootbaar is a guy who still has another gear in him.
And I think that's kind of the theme for me too, when we're talking about areas that they can get better and areas where there can be improvement. It's those types of things. It's not so much anything that's hurting them, because they're winning games,
right,
and they're playing great defense, as an example.
They're arguably the best defensive team in all of Major League Baseball.
Absolutely. I mean, with Walker being above average now, but that play last night, he doesn't make that play a year ago. And I'll tell you this, there are a lot of right fielders in baseball that cannot make that play because he's faster than them.
Came out of nowhere.
Yeah, and Victor Scott took a bad route. He went back on that ball and might not have gotten there.
I don't think he would have.
Yeah. No, thank God Walker was there.
I don't think that was Scott's ball at all. And
it should have been Scott.
Should have been. But no, I don't see a scenario where he gets there. And for Walker to come in and make that play, that's a huge moment. And I'm not trying. We obviously talked a lot about Walker and Gorman earlier on the show, and that's a big part of the what can be better. But for Walker to have this defensive improvement as much as he has, where he's allowed the defense to be better while still not going, because a lot of times if a guy is struggling offensively, he's struggling
out to the field. Yeah.
If he's not doing that, and that's a big credit to Jordan Walker.
It's partly too, when you heard Ollie talking about him earlier, saying he's not, he doesn't, it's not that he has no friends and he's not really dragging around because he's upset. I think it's because he knows he's making a contribution in some way.
Yeah.
So when you're contributing in some way, it's easier to deal with a thing that's wrong, right? So if you're contributing defensively, but you're slumping offensively, you at least feel like you're doing something, and vice versa. If you're not a good defender, but you're hitting, but when you're not doing either, it can be a big psychological drag. So I think there's that. I think other areas that, again, not so much pounding the table and saying this needs to get better, just areas that I think they're going to be better. I think you're going to continue to see better defense behind the plate.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, with Herrera getting more DH time, and this is the right move. I mean,
100%.
You and Bernie and I talked about it. Was it last Friday or the Friday before? I mean, we've been talking about this for a couple weeks now about Ivan Herrera. No, it was 2 weeks ago. We were talking about this. This is where he fits best. Catch occasionally, hit every day.
Yeah.
Catch occasionally, hit every day.
He has to be in the line. And I keep repeating this over and over. This sets you up for the future, because Jimmy Crooks is going to get here.
Yeah.
And you had to figure out a scenario where Von Herrera, Pedro Paz, and Jimmy Crooks can be on the roster at the same time. And now you've kind of figured that out. Now it comes at the detriment of Nolan Gorman and Alec Burleson.
It does, yeah.
Because those guys.
And Walker.
Sure. Yeah, maybe.
Well, it's going to, because to get Burleson in, you're going to have to do that.
Yeah, at some point. That's true.
Because Walker's only had 22 at-bats this month, too.
He had those 2 days off in a row, and that's a big part of the at-bats being a little bit down. But yeah, look, you got to win games. And I think as long as this team can show that they are a competitive club, winning has to matter.
Well, I mean, it is, and this is kind of this ties into the conversation about runway, right? And I don't believe the runway should run out for Walker or Gorman. I don't think it should run out this year at all, but it doesn't mean you're also guaranteed every day playing time. And now when an injury comes up, because it will, somebody in the regular lineup is going to get hurt. Well, then that means that player can step up and they're going to get those opportunities. So we don't know who it will be, but somebody will. It's just 162 game season, man. You're not going to have the same 9 position players not get hurt.
It was kind of funny, a couple of weeks ago, week and a half ago, whenever it was, they made a big deal about, we're finally going to get Gorman in the lineup every single day. We've got this commitment to his runway, and we've really got to give him that. And it lasted like 3 days, and the circumstances of the team just changed where you couldn't get him in there.
No, and look, if you are in a position where it's July and you're 8 games out, then there would be no excuse to not play them.
Correct.
But you're doing 2 things, and it's not. I don't think you're doing it wrong this way. I don't think it's wrong. I want to see more of those guys, but you do have to earn time. And look, not picking. This is not. I'm a big Nolan Gorman fan. I think he's got still a good strong major league future. It wouldn't surprise me if he's a guy that just blooms in his late 20s as he gets more feel. I mean, maybe a Max Muncy type hitter, where he's always had the power, but it's going to come along later just because of the nature of the beast. But I don't see him contributing in a defensive way the way that Walker does.
Sure.
Where even if Walker's in the lineup, if he's hitting 8th, he's not killing you. Not when everybody else is hitting.
I think Gorman is better defensively than maybe some people give him credit for.
Yeah.
But he's not a game difference making defensive player.
Well, and he's also not better than the alternatives.
Right.
That's more of the issue, right?
Yeah.
Because Donovan's really good at second, and obviously Arenado's one of the greatest of all time at third base. So a little bit different thing that you're managing to kind of work around there. All right, so that's the Cardinals stuff for today. We'll obviously have more. Probably not tomorrow with the doubleheader, but we'll see.
Never know.
We'll see with the rain, and then we'll do this again on Thursday as well. But coming up next, we're going to change gears and talk Hall of Fame. Rob Manfred changed baseball history with an announcement today. We're going to talk a bit about that, what it means for Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe, and whether or not they get in, whether or not they should get in. We'll cram as much of that conversation as we can get into the next segment when we come back on the Redbird Rush Hour.
The U.S. Air Force Band of Mid-America is bringing free concerts to the metro area May 6th.
Hour on 104.1 KMOX.
All right, Redbird Rush Hour coming to a close. Sports Open Line after the top of the hour. One of us is staying. That would be Matt Pauley.
Here I am. Not going anywhere.
KMOX
You're stuck with me.
The KMOX audience has had too much of me already today. This is my 5th hour on the air today, which, by the way, is great. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And especially this one being baseball. All right, let's talk about Rob Manfred's decision today this is the simplest version of this, okay? It does allow Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson to be selected for the Hall of Fame.
Correct.
It doesn't mean they are going in. It does not mean they're going on the writer's ballot. They are not. They can't. The rules don't allow that. So they'll be going to the Eras Committee, which will be heard next in 2027 for the class of 2028. So one or both of these guys could be going in with Albert.
You know what? I hope that doesn't happen.
I agree, because I don't want that to be the story.
Exactly.
I want Albert to be the story.
Yeah.
There's a lot to break down in this, but let's just do the simple version here. What Rob Manfred did was change the rule that says it's basically just change the band list. You come off it when you die.
Yeah. So
that's what it really that's the change today.
Right. Basically saying that you cannot be on the permanently ineligible list if you are not living.
Right.
So if you're dead, you are then no longer permanently ineligible.
Right.
And now when Pete Rose was put on that list, the folks over at the Hall of Fame, and remember, the Baseball Hall of Fame does not have official connection to Major League Baseball.
No.
But the folks over at the Hall of Fame, they created what became known as the Pete Rose rule.
Yeah, they did it dirty.
Yeah.
They waited until after he accepted his ban, and then they changed the rules.
Right. They changed the rule to say people who are on the permanently ineligible list are also not eligible for the Hall of Fame. So now that the Hall of Fame could change the rules again. The Hall of Fame could now go back and say anybody who's ever been on the permanently ineligible list is not eligible for the Hall of Fame. They could
do that, yeah.
And then Pete Rose is going to be in the exact same spot that he was 2 hours ago.
But that's not an MLB thing.
No, has nothing
Hall
to
of
do
Fame
with
is
Major
separate.
League Baseball. So there's a lot of different things here. I take issue, and look, it was on our very news from one of our national news partners 40 minutes ago. I take issue with the Rob Manfred has reinstated Pete Rose. No, he hasn't. He changed the rule. He changed the rule to state that you're only eligible to be permanently ineligible, for lack of a better term,
if you're alive. Yeah. I didn't like his logic. He said once an individual passed away, the purpose of Rule 21 has been served. I disagree. The infraction is what's being punished, not the human. And the infraction is being involved with gambling on your sport.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a different thing. Now, let's do a quick thought, okay? Because we only have about 2 minutes, and I will defer. You go first. Should Pete be in? What's your case for or against?
Yeah, I'm this way with the steroids guys too. Like I'm a put them in, but also make sure that it's very clear what they did to disgrace the game.
Yeah.
Because we don't know a lot of stuff that other people did who are in the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
So let's not be the arbiters of morality. Let's instead look at what was done on the field.
I've always said this, and this is going back 30 years. I've been in sports talk for 30 years. So 1995 was my first year in sports talk. And I've been saying this since then because it was a really big story back then.
Yeah.
Pete should be in the Hall of Fame if people choose him. He belongs in the Hall of Fame. His career merits it. But Pete is a horrible person, and I will not feel sorry for him if he's left out. And the right thing was he should never have worked in baseball again, and they did that.
Correct.
Because that's the problem. A guy that does that cannot be associated with the sport. But because his infraction came after his career, I don't mind recognizing the career. But he should never have been involved in the sport again, and he wasn't. So to me, if he goes in, I will not celebrate it because he's a terrible person. He carried on a years-long affair with a teenage girl while he was a 30-plus-year-old married man, Major League Baseball player. And he admitted to it in court and said, well, we didn't have sex till she was 16 because 16 was the legal age in Ohio. So I will not feel bad if Pete gets left out, but it's fine to me if he gets in because his career merits that. Sports Open Line coming up next on KMOX.
Another RX Watch brought to you by Onder Law.
Welcome back to RX Watch.